Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Without Context podcast. Today we have something that I think we're going to go with episode 3.1. You guys are probably going to see this after episode 3, but it does carry on a topic that we got to near the end of episode 3 about that Alvin brought up about representation in the media, gaming, television, movies, uh, and as you see, we don't have the full team here today. We have us four. I'm not going to partake in the conversation. You can see me and my people in many things, portrayed in a variety of ways.
We kicked out the other white guy.
I was gonna say, what was the joke that we made when we were planning?
And
Kicked out the other white guy.
Get better
And-
soon, Charlie.
yeah, Charlie's just
Charlie.
Charlie's just not feeling well today, so we're also taking this chance to just kind of make a little side episode for you all, which you're going to be able to view on YouTube. You're not going to be able to see this on Spotify just yet. This is going to be a YouTube exclusive kind of series whenever we do something like this. But as you know, we have myself, SharkyHat, and we also have our usual companions here, Haley, Deca, and Sky. So this is going to be a shorter episode, and we're just kind of go around to each of these individuals. If you're watching the video, you can clearly see why we decided to do this episode. We have a lovely young woman, a Hispanic gentleman, and an Asian gentleman with us. And like I said,
Gentleman.
I'm a white male. You guys can see me in pretty much every form of media, but there are other portrayals of characters, and this is why we're getting views from these three today. We're going to go around to everybody. We're going to have them talk about a bad representation that they've seen in regards to someone like them, as well as a great representation. I know that can kind of be subjective at times. The characters are usually written a certain way, especially in the case of female characters. But you can still kind of, do them a little better in some cases, even if that role kind of calls for that kind of character. So, as always, start with Haley.
Okay. Bad representations. I guess for me, the most time I've always the genre or type of media I've always felt the most "Ugh," about when it comes to seeing how females are represented, or female presenting people is anime. I
Alvin's
There
face
have
tells a
Yeah.
thousand things.
Yep.
Yeah,
Understandable.
it took me a long time to really find where I felt even just comfortable existing in certain anime spaces. Like the first anime that I watched, of course, was Pokemon, which I feel like that was a lot of North American people's introduction into anime. But once I got into some of the more shonen stuff, was when it got really off the walls of just I'm uncomfortable almost all the time, and I've really sort of completely abandoned ship in most shonen anime. I'll watch a couple of the seasons, and as soon as it starts that turn that every shonen anime makes where it's I'm having fun to we're traumatizing children is when I'm cool, I'm gonna go watch Fruits Basket for the umpteenth millionth time.
To be fair, Fruits Basket is amazing. So
I that was the first I would say real anime that wasn't Pokemon or Digimon or something like that that I watched. I was 11 years old, and I was this is what TV can be, and that one wasn't even that great when it came out back in 2000 something. Yeah, Deca, what's up?
Um, I just know what you mean about shonen being terrible for female femme presenting characters, because every time one of them just dies to make the protagonist, I have to fight for them. It's
That's
bullshit.
That's a trope that you can
Yes.
find, TV trope. It's I forget the actual wording. I think it's fridging the girlfriend
Yeah,
or something
fridging
like
the
that,
girl-
where it's
fridging
the
the-
character
fridging the
the
GF.
character only exists to die to push the character's development.
Exactly. And that it always felt to me like the girls were just there as just an object to be looked at, and were like inherently overly sexualized in like a way that I couldn't identify when I was a kid. And then I look back and I'm like, oh, all the girls have huge boobs, and that doesn't make sense if they're 12 in most cases. And it's I think one of the worst ones that I remember and actually like made me like I left like the entire situation was I was watching oh god, like I think it's called Gundam Seed, like Mobile Suit Gundam Seed.
That's
Yep.
And
one of the older ones, yeah.
I don't remember any of the context for the scenes. Like if there's any like Mobile Suit Gundam Seed fans in the crowd, I'm really sorry. But like the main guy character is like he has like this female friend and then this like overly sexualized female companion that's like taking advantage of him in order to blah blah blah. And his friend, that's a girl's like, "Hey, buddy, this seems like a really bad plan that you're in." And then he punches her in the face,
Oh,
and
shit.
that's how he resolves the situation. Like he punches this girl who is his friend, which like punch whoever you want in the face, whatever. Don't punch anybody in the face, preferably. But the fact that she was like coming to him being like, "This seems like it's a bad situation you're in," and then his way to resolve it was like punch her in the face, and the show was like, "Isn't that a great thing that he just did?" I was like, "I'm going home.
Bye.
Mom says I have to
Bye."
go home right
Mom
now,
says I have to go home right
immediately.
now.
No, it's just the mean girls.
Yeah.
It's like, Mom, can you pick me up? I'm scared.
Exactly. And I just felt like that person who was like, "You'll really like this show." I have no content. Like that was like the end of our like interactions. So I was like, if that is what you think is an okay thing to consume, I don't want anything to do with you as a
Yeah, that's
person.
totally fair. Understandable.
But to pivot to something that I think was great and like sort of changed my relationship with like the superhero genre was the Wonder Woman movie. I had no interest
Good
in
one.
seeing it when it was first announced because my I was only really have ever seen Marvel movies, and with like Black Widow and even
Mhm.
like how they started dressing Scarlet Witch when she was first introduced, I was like, I don't need to see more of like unattainable women in like impractical costuming, like say doing whatever it is they're doing. But like my friend dragged me to it, and there was just subtle things in that movie about how it was filmed that really like I was like there's audible gasps from like the women in the audience when she hits the superhero pose, the camera's here, like straight on. Whereas like we're used to the camera being slightly tilted upwards towards it, so it's like almost like an upskirt shot. And just the
Yeah.
fact that it was like facing completely forward was just like and then her thigh muscle moved. Like when she landed, it moved. And like I'm not even kidding, the entire row of women was like, "Did you see her thigh move? Did everybody else see that?" And like we picked up on
It's
it
it's those little things.
immediately.
Yeah, it's those little things where it's like, wow, there's body fat. Like there's actual like weight
Muscle
to.
definition.
There's muscle
It
definition. There's actually like
it
a
moves like a
physical person.
human's body moved, and she like was allowed like she wasn't ridiculed for like being excited about seeing a baby in the street, and like she defeated like spoilers for Wonder Woman. If I'm like I saw it once and I was like, this is so perfect, I can never like revisit it because then it might not be as perfect as that first time I watched it.
That's
But like
fair.
she defeated Ares by like embracing her emotional side, which was baffling to me, especially because that was when Game of Thrones was huge, and they didn't even try to hide the fact that like Arya is the superior Stark sister because she's a more masculine fighting badass, whereas Sansa was occupied a more traditionally feminine role within that society. And I was like, I will punch anybody who tries to come after Sansa Stark. And it was just that sort of tilt shifted how I interacted with like media ever since because Wonder Woman, I was like, oh, I can have a good superhero movie about a girl that's not like through a lens where I'm just like, okay, yeah, she's got a hot outfit, she's doing the cool kick, she's having the thing where her thighs are around the dude's head and then whips around. I'm like, if I have to see that one more time, I'm gonna puke. But Decca, you had your hand up.
Uh, there's a YouTuber that I'll show you later. Her
Oh,
name is
sick.
Caitlin Riley. And she does a lot of shorts. Or I think she does exclusively shorts, like YouTube shorts, where they're like it's like they're trying to be like TikTok or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And some of my favorites are like how women are portrayed in action movies and how there's a I'll send you them in a bit. But it's like how women are portrayed in sci-fi movies where it's like the woman that's like I'm I'm a woman, but I'm also a scientist, but I can't be both, or
You
something
can't
like that.
be both. Like, I think the other time, which like I have a complicated relationship with Firefly, which like I think Kaylee was probably one of the better women representations in that show, but there was still like this, and I don't know if this is like a Joss Whedon because his hands were all over that, but like the fact that she was like, yeah, I'm this mechanic, but I can also be a girly girl was like revolutionary, but she wasn't a girly girl in most, like she didn't embrace that until it was like convenient for the plot.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into like anything that's touched by Joss Whedon.
Yeah, like Josh Whedon exists in this weird place where he has a reputation, like around, I guess, female actresses or something. But he somehow also writes compelling female characters. Like growing up, Buffy, I watched the Buffy the Vampire Slayer series, and I was like, this chick's badass. But it's like you think of Josh Whedon now, and it's like it's just kind of tainted a little bit. It's just I was like, how can you hit the marks? Like, how can you hit the marks at times, but also still be this kind of person? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think he succeeded in like having women like be badass in a way that felt natural, in a way that like I was super excited for Captain Marvel, but that movie I felt was a little too ham-fisted, and it's like girl power, like I'm a girl and can do stuff. Like it felt too ham-fisted in a way that like Birds of Prey, it was just naturally like a girl's movie, and I loved Birds of Prey. Like
It
absolutely loved it. Like the love story was about her egg sandwich. And I was like, yes, it doesn't even have to be about a guy half the time. Like I would fight somebody for a good egg sandwich. And there like it doesn't have to be that hard to just like have women just like exist and not serve as like a plot device or like I don't know if you guys are into Attack on Titan at all, but I've kept up with it tangentially, but like Mikasa, I've got some complex feelings about my girl Mikasa, but without spoilers. But yeah, there's
um,
been some good ones for me. Overwhelming a lot of just like, all right, lay it on me.
would you say like Wonder Woman hit boxes that you wish you had like growing up?
Yeah, it hit boxes I didn't know I could have. Like I didn't like because I like the first superhero movie that I really saw was like Batman Begins in like 8th grade. And then Iron Man came out in high school. And of course, like the Avengers, like the only girl that was
Yeah.
ever there was like Black Widow and the Robin. I forget what her actual Maria. Maria, was that her name?
Maria Hill.
Maria
Yeah.
Hill. Robin Scherbatsky.
Robin
And
Scherbatsky.
I was so used to like women in those types of genres, just like, oh yeah, they're gonna have like a metal bra as their armor and their whole stomach is gonna be out and they're gonna do the like super sexy pose. And I was just like, okay, I get it. Like this is just what I have to have if I'm gonna watch these movies. But then Wonder Woman came out and I was like, we could have had this the whole time. I could have had like practical armor and like an emotionally driven story the whole time. I didn't have to suffer through these like plots where I'm just like, or like feel like I have to be into this stuff just to like be relevant in social circles or like even in like broader talks of like pop culture. I could have just enjoyed it the whole time. Like I cried in Wonder Woman when it was like almost over because I was just like, I don't want this experience to be over because like I had never felt like I didn't really connect with like the Disney princess movies because I was more of a tomboy growing up. So I was just like, I get it. You get a dress, you marry a prince, boring. Valid, but to me, boring. And then anything in like the action genre was just like, okay, I'm gonna have to be like the cool girl who's like okay with how the girls on the screen look and like not say anything about it. And then Wonder Woman came out and I was just like, I could have had this the whole time, and I was just angry.
Would you say that like Ellen Ripley ranks high, like from the Aliens franchise also?
I have not seen Aliens because I am
Oh,
a
you
little
need
bitch
to.
baby. Little bitch baby. But everything I've
so
heard is that she's really cool. I'm
yeah,
just
so
too much of a fraidy cat.
the first one is more of a like typical horror movie. The second one definitely like falls into like an action movie. where like
Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver's
It's more of like
the
a
lead.
sci-fi thriller kind of
Yeah.
type.
For example, like they remade that with all women, and look how much like I liked the movie. I was like, I relate to these characters, I get where they're coming from. I connected with the story better because it wasn't about these 4 dudes who I was like vaguely aware of. And then the only girl I saw on screen was like Sigourney Weaver's character, who's what? A sexualized secretary? Cool. I'm not gonna watch Ghostbusters, but like the girl Ghost. But then everyone was real mad about it. So I'm like, okay, I'll just go back to my little box over here and not talk about it.
I haven't watched it, but me personally, I'd probably go into it with sort of that same mindset where it's like it's not your usual 4 guys and the sexy secretary type thing. Instead, it's 4 women and a himbo.
Oh,
Great.
Played by the perfect casting choice, by the way, too.
Absolutely, 100%.
that and like that. This might just be like a me being socially awkward thing, but like I was uncomfortable with Chris Hemsworth's characterization because I think to me it came across as more of a like, see, we can do it to boys too, and I'm like, maybe we shouldn't.
I think
That's
though.
fair.
I
Yeah.
think that was the flaw the movie had going forward, is like the whole marketing. Like if you had just marketed it like that, but I think like it became this whole thing where like the producers started like insulting people, and they were like, people who aren't fans aren't going to see this movie anyway, so why bother? And it's just like all this stuff was being thrown out, and then it bombed. So
Care. I had a good time, and that's all I could really ask for in like that genre of a movie. Is like, was I made physically uncomfortable? Not often. Like I felt bad for Chris Hemsworth, but like you could tell like he was having a good time doing it, but there was something about where I was like, this doesn't feel like progress. But like the rest of it had a blast. And that's all I can really ask for when I go see an action movie. Like
Yeah.
I guess now that I'm like an adult, I'm more open about like I'm not as into like action or like thriller, sci-fi, any of those types of movies anymore because like I never really saw myself in those spaces. But period dramas and romance movies, I'm watching The Crown and like having the most freaking delightful time. So I'm like nothing like overly scary is gonna jump out at me. Like it's not gonna be like Game of Thrones where I'm like, this woman, I've related to her character arc. Now I have to watch her be like brutally assaulted for Theon Greyjoy's character development.
Yeah, it was kind of.
We have to watch a
That's
child get
rough.
burned at the stake for a man's character development. We love this energy we've created in the studio today. So,
And then there's just everything about Daenerys's like final character arc, which is just like, well, you completely failed with whatever you set out to do. So
the books, which are as physically uncomfortable, if not more physically uncomfortable than the show, because they're younger in the show.
Yeah.
Like Daenerys is like 14 years old. And when I realized that as I was reading it, I was like, yikes.
Yeah.
Just
that's
big
gonna be
yikes.
that's gonna be an oof from me, dog.
This is gonna be a oof from me, dog. And I can see better. They communicate like her inner thoughts obviously better in the book, so like it didn't surprise me in the slightest that they did what they did. Just the pacing was terrible, and like we're not
Yeah.
arguing that they like totally fumbled that whole last season. I just, again, Daenerys Targaryen died for Jon Snow's character development. Her death was not even her own, and I'm like, if you're
And-
gonna kill her, make it about her for like 1 second. They like anything that happens to a woman on that show is for a guy's character development. And I was like, I used to like this show.
And it was an unconsequential death either, because like nothing happened. John was just sent off.
He just
And like everything went back to
everyone
business
already
as
liked
usual.
him.
Everybody went
everyone
back to
liked him.
it went back to business as usual, and he just left. So it was like there was no fallout from it. It just was a thing that happened. Like,
I will say we had a betting pool in my office going into that season. We had like a whiteboard where we wrote down like who we thought was going to be on the Iron Throne, blah blah blah, and like what our ultimate goal was for the season. And the only thing I wrote on the board was Sansa is happy, safe, and doing whatever the fuck she wants. And I was the only one who was right. Spoilers for Game of Thrones if anyone cares, but
I don't think anybody cares
Yeah.
about the final season anymore.
The final season just never happened.
Yeah.
We're still waiting.
So
Wow, I
We're waiting
can't
for
believe they
final
never
season.
finished that show.
I know it's incredible.
wild.
It had such hype, and then it just disappeared off the face of the planet. But
It was a really
yeah, I
daring.
guess my interactions with like female media has shifted from I just tend to gravitate towards like female creators now. Like I'm reading the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which
Oh, I've
I
heard of
adore.
that actually.
Oh my god.
I think
It's
I heard of that too. I actually think I have one of those books on my Audible like wish list.
homie, oh my god. I don't know if it's something you'll be interested in because like the main narrator is like a 19-year-old girl, and it's
Eh,
about her like the whole first book is like her falling in love with this like I'm not going to give you any spoilers about how I feel about Tamlin, but I think it's great because it's about her like taking control of her own destiny and her agency over the course of the books. I'm in the third book right now, and I'm obsessed with it.
I mean, me and Kristen are watching Pretty Little Liars right now, and I could go on a whole tangent about that show, but I'm not. So, if
I don't have the stomach for shows like that where it's like at any moment something crazy could happen. Like I tried getting into Gossip Girl. It's
the
too
thing,
much. I don't have the constitution for Gossip Girl.
the biggest like I have about the show is like they're trying to make the student teacher relationship goals instead of why.
Is-
like,
Ooh.
Yeah, that is I guess that
So-
is my critique of like women written media is ladies, stop making some taboo relationships seem cool.
stop making illegal goals.
Let's not. I'm looking at you, Stephanie Meyer. I'm looking at you, E.L.
Oof.
James. I'm looking at you, the
Oof.
person who does the Pretty Little Liars TV show.
Ooh.
Let's just as a blanket statement, let's just stop making these shows about high schoolers and then doing all this weird sexual stuff in it. like
Yeah.
like
Anyone else's
Riverdale,
high school
Pretty Little
experience
Liar.
was
Just
like, but like, I was home like before curfew. I was the youngest of 3 daughters. They had it down pat by the time I rolled around.
man,
If I didn't
was
do
out,
my homework, I was grounded. Like,
I was out playing Magic on Friday nights. I was not getting laid in. I was not getting laid in the slightest. like
I was playing Kingdom Hearts.
I was a band kid. I was
I
at
was also a
practice
band
3
kid.
days a week. So
I was
like,
on the dance team in the band, so
it
doubly
counts.
uncool.
We take
Oh.
it.
well, let's get back on topic.
Yes,
anything
but
else to add?
anyway, yeah, so just let women be women how they define womanhood and don't sexualize anybody. And don't punch your friends
Easy.
in the face.
Don't punch your friends in the face.
Don't punch your friends in the face.
Unless they deserve it.
Now,
Unless they're
she'd punch
guys,
that boy in the face.
unless they're guys and they deserve it. 'Cause
See,
they're being
don't punch
douchebags.
anybody in the face. I wouldn't punch anybody in the face.
If
It's
your
not
friend's
worth the
being-
jail time.
If your friend's being that guy though, you gotta stop him. Like
Somebody's got to stop them.
somebody's
If
gotta
it's a
stop him.
crime, ooh,
Yeah, it was a weird
was
like
that?
lighting.
That was
I don't know.
powerful.
That was your hand coming towards the like
That
towards
was
the
your-
camera.
oh, my
whole-
light got unplugged.
No, that's
Oh,
right.
okay. I was like, your whole
Alright.
camera did that.
Yeah. All right.
We'll have to
Let's
look
move.
at that in the playback.
Let's move to Deca.
All right. I'm gonna start with
Thank you,
the
Haley,
good
by the way.
representation. Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna start with the good representation because that has changed a lot as I've discovered things about myself. From when I was younger, it used to be. I think my answer to this would have been Forge from the Marvel comics, because
Yes.
Forge is basically Native American Tony Stark, but better. That's it. His mutant power is he's so good with technology,
Yeah,
and
he
this
just
is
make
some
anything.
billionaire shithead.
His mutant power
Um,
is like knowing like technology inside and out.
Innately knows how it works.
Yeah.
But that has changed over the years as I have learned more about myself and I have developed my gender identity. I am non-binary. So I would go with Nico Aris from Magic the Gathering, actually.
Oh, go. I'm sorry, but I'm sure they are very cool. Tell me more.
So Nico Aris is a planeswalker, which means they can flip around other dimensions and go into other lands. And I have a picture that you can put here at some point.
Yeah, I'll put it in the video.
Yeah.
Put it in the video.
Put it in the video. So they are from Theros, which is fantasy Greece for Magic the Gathering. we're ruled by gods and all of that stuff. And if you look at their character, like this is not far off from like me at 19. Like that, like the way this is like how I wanted to look at 19, like cool two-tone hair, the side shave. They have a little bit of like yeah, exactly. They have a little bit of a chin scruff. And it helps me it further cements my identity with this whole ass beard that I have here, that I am still non-binary even with this whole thing here. And it made me feel really, really good to see that Planeswalker there, and to not only that, to see all of the content creators respect their pronouns, and they go by they them the whole time through. Do I like to play them in Magic Arena? Absolutely not. I hate their card. But I like the idea that there are different people of different walks of life, different identities, and so on and so forth in the Magic the Gathering universe.
Yeah, little aside from that, I think it was the Khans Tarkir set. They introduced their first like canon trans individual also.
Yeah, Elisha who smiles at death.
And I was there for that public reaction. Glad to see the Magic community so goddamn welcoming. So
yeah, but this one was good for me, and I don't care what those other nerds think.
Yeah, it's just
that's how you should go through life.
Yeah,
you just have to.
Does this affect you? No, then shut the fuck up.
It costs $0 to stay in your own lane and mind your own business.
And sometimes if you try to change lanes, you wreck. So
you wreck. So just don't yuck somebody else's yum.
Exactly. I think a negative one, again, not necessarily going for the Hispanic. No, you know what? I will go for the Hispanic in me. Fuck that guy.
Can I just add, by the way, when you started with Forge saying Native American, I was sitting here like, oh god, have I gotten Jeremy wrong all these years? Like, I was like, I could have sworn he was Hispanic. Is he Native American? Like,
it's my personal family tree is complicated.
Yeah.
Anyway, so most people in this would put like Speedy Gonzalez in this thing in the bad representation. But honestly, Speedy Gonzalez not that bad. He's just a little guy who runs around with a sombrero and a little outfit. And it's dated, yes, but it's not like bad in my opinion. However, the bad one, Slowpoke Rodriguez. For those of you who don't know, Slowpoke Rodriguez, he was basically the antithesis to Speedy Gonzalez, where Speedy Gonzalez is fast, charming, Slowpoke Rodriguez walks around. It is heavily implied that he's drunk. Has the same little outfit, but it's more wrinkled. And you'll see him like go around hiccuping la cucaracha, la cucaracha. Ya no puede caminar.
That's he's from Looney Tunes, right? Like he's part of that.
Yeah, he's from Looney Tunes.
I remember the character
now.
So.
Yeah.
Yes.
This might not be within your realm, but do you remember the controversy that came out with Rise of Skywalker and what they did with Poe Dameron with Oscar Isaac? Because he had said in interviews that he liked being Poe Dameron because he finally hadn't been typecast as like a Hispanic drug dealer, and then they made him an old spice runner or like a space drug dealer.
Yeah.
And I remember people were very upset about it.
That's all I get. It's much like the women who have to be the certain like someone's arm candy. I have to deal with people who they're just drug dealers or gangbangers, or that one hilarious dude who just like made it his career in all those movies where he was that one thug.
So
it was like in all those Adam Sandler movies.
Yeah, it's like there's also Danny Trejo who's just like embracing that stereotype. He's like embracing that stereotype, but he's like
he's making it his own.
Yeah, he's making it his own. He's not just some random.
He does
dude.
comedy roles. Like he can be like this big, intimidating guy, but he does also like comedy roles where he's like a gentle giant, like still looking like he does. Yeah, he was in Spy Kids.
Like the whole thing where his character. Yeah, like his character in Spy Kids is also the same Machete in the Machete movies.
Yeah,
Like
the
it's the same guy, and I love that he's
Robert Rodriguez extended universe.
exactly.
The
Yeah,
Robert Rodriguez extended universe. Hell yeah. But yeah, it was that's kind of like fuck Slowpoke Rodriguez even more than anyone thinks Speedy Gonzalez should be. Like Slowpoke Rodriguez should get all the hate, and he is correctly not in any media nowadays. And that's why you've never heard of him. I remember seeing his ass.
Yeah.
yeah. It kind of reminds me of like how any movie that takes place in like Mexico has like the sepia
The
filter.
sepia filter, yeah. It's like the picture of America and then Mexico, and it's just a sepia filter. It's the same
Yeah.
place.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's there was one it was the same thing for like East European countries. It's like here's a picture from like a neighborhood in some Eastern European country, and then it's like here's what's like in movies, and it's like a blue filter or like
Oh,
a gray
yeah.
filter over it. It's like
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Jesus.
I think, yeah, but like negative stereotypes have always been like the drug dealer, the drug runner, the whatever John Leguizamo's character is in whatever movie, except for when he was Luigi. That was good.
That's fair.
Except that comes.
Sid the Sloth.
Yes,
He was in the sloth.
Is he
And that's,
really?
he was
yeah,
Sid the
he's
Sloth.
Oh my god.
Don't you see the resemblance?
A little bit now that you say something. Yeah, a little
Hate
bit.
that. So what was it? Where was I going? Oh yeah. There's the other thing about like as far as like the native influence of me, like that just goes back to those old like John Wayne movies and like the Cowboys and Indians where it's like a white dude in like tanned and it's black and
Yeah.
white, so they can't tell the difference. You just put a light coating of tan on them, put a headdress on them, make them wear a little thing, and they're on their way.
I think there was a wrestler that did that too back in like the 80s. It was a white guy playing like a Native American like
Tatanka?
chief. No, it was I think it was like late 70s, early 80s.
Okay.
And unless I'm remembering it incorrectly, I think his name was Chief Wahoo.
Oh yeah.
But it's like I'm pretty sure it was like the whitest guy on the planet, just like in a headdress.
Yes, Haley.
Like,
Retired, like someone's like birthday party in Germany when I was visiting my family, and they were so excited to bring me because they're like, "Oh, it is Cowboys and Indians themed," and I'm like, "Really?"
Ooh.
Well, I thought it
Ooh.
was just they said it was like Western themed, so I brought like a plaid like flannel shirt and like boots to wear and like did my hair in like pigtail braids. But there was people there in like straight up like red face and like the full
Ugh.
headdresses. And
Oof.
I was like, don't take any pictures of me at this party, okay?
I'm not here. No,
I'm
do
not
take me.
here. I
It's
ain't
Sharky.
here. And
I
go
have
ahead.
I have a correction. And I really need to correct this.
Okay.
Chief Wahoo McDaniel was actually Native American. It was Chief Jay Strongbow, who was a Native American wrestler played by an Italian American. So
that just goes back into it. You get some dude who can olive skin themselves and just put a headdress on them and kick them out there.
Yeah, so before I got any kind of hate mail for that, I just want to make that correction real quick. That I remembered that there was somebody who did that. I just got the character wrong.
I kept, because in my head I went through my Rolodex of like high chiefs, like Peter Maivia and like Roman Reigns, whatever he's doing right now, and all of them are of color, people in indigenous places.
They're Samoan. They're
Samoans.
That whole family basically is like
Yeah.
the Samoan like dynasty of wrestlers. It's
Wrestling
all one
dynasty,
family.
yeah.
Going on today because like I only learned this recently, like Taylor Lautner, who played a Native American in Twilight, isn't Native American. He's like fully a white dude that just happens to be pretty tan. And I was like,
yeah.
But those Italian castings that they get are just they can get them because they tan naturally. It looks natural, but they're still white. They're still white to me, dog. They're white with a little bit of olive oil.
A bit of spice.
A little bit of olive oil.
I think
yeah.
I think something that goes back to wrestling real quick is that I think that representation just in a lot of places is probably like built into it. in certain ways, because I saw a post like WWE, I think, posted a Twitter post about this, and I don't know why you're celebrating it like this. Yeah, I think it was like Bobby Lashley is being celebrated as the longest reigning like African American WWE champion at like 180 days. And I'm like, that's 6 months. And you have like all these other people who held stuff for like a year, maybe 2 years almost in certain places, and it's like 6 months is the world record for you guys on having an
bar is
African
low.
American individual in the what 40 years you've been around.
The bar is low.
So it's just
Yeah,
like
yikes for me.
I saw that today on Twitter. I was like, Jesus, Vince, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, another thing is like you had just still on the wrestling tangent, you had Kofi Kingston, who was world champion, and then like his title match, he just got destroyed. Like they
Got
didn't even
demolished by
like
Brock Lesnar.
they didn't even let him like put up a fight. They just beat him, and like the belt was off. And I was like,
That's
all
cool.
right. And I was like, all right, well, people loved him, and I guess you guys were proving a point. So you're gonna keep putting it on the strong white guy. So
Yeah, that was my thing of
But,
this.
all right. So last but
Yeah.
not least, we'll go to Alvin.
Yeah, so I think obviously I have to bring up Shang-Chi because that's the most recent thing that's going to be coming out.
You are
as
excited.
I'm very excited. As of recording, yeah, I'm going to go watch it tomorrow, which is a Thursday. And
showing.
yeah, well, actually, it's like at
like
like
the-
6 o'clock now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
whatever
like
the first
the
showing
night.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. But I mean that has to be one of the best just representations. But I do kind of have a caveat with it, which I've mentioned before. It's anytime you put a strong Asian male in any sort of lead role, usually it's because he can do one thing, and that one thing is some sort of martial arts.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of tired of like martial arts being a superpower because it can be learned, but also like it doesn't take away that having him be in such a big universe, like it's Marvel, it's a really big universe, it's a really big deal, it's millions and millions of dollars put into this movie, it's still a big deal, but like his superpower kind of being kung fu is takes away from it a little bit for me. But another good one is obviously everybody's probably heard about it. It's Crazy Rich Asians, where it
I
puts
loved that movie.
yeah, it's so good. I actually cried watching that movie, so I expect to cry watching Shang-Chi come tomorrow. But like putting Asian men in desirable positions, like being attractive and like being in a place where like they're wanted, then they're not seen as like a nuisance or something like that. That's another really good one. And I think just having that representation for not only having Asian male leads, having Asian female leads who's also like their superpower isn't kung fu or martial arts, being put in a desirable position and like being and not being like sexualized, because that's a big problem with women in general, but Asian women especially, because Asian women are super like fetishized. Like
Yeah.
I've had experience with it at some point where somebody liked me because I was Asian, not because I was me, and that was like a big thing for me. So like people being smart and being wanted for their intelligence and things like that is Crazy Rich Asians does a really good job, and so does I'm hoping Shang-Chi does too, because like Aquafina, she blew up really big, but she does comedy, and like that's also somewhere you don't see a lot of Asian people in. Like I can name Aquafina and I can name Ali Wong, and that's like the two big like Asian women comedians.
Can I
So
say a question about the? It's probably the obvious question, but you think
yeah.
that weird, like, fetish about it kind of comes from like a preconception that there's like a submissive nature.
Yeah, I think so. But if
Because like that's the thing, I think that's what most people think is like I want, if they're like I want an Asian girlfriend, is because they have this thing in their mind for some reason that they're more submissive.
yeah, I
And
think that just has
I
to
don't know
do
where
with.
that stems from. It's just
I couldn't tell
Supremacy.
you.
It's
Yeah,
a
just
white supremacist ideology
okay.
because during the occupation after World War II in Japan specifically, they noticed how there was like cultural homogeny, and were just like, if white people could do this, this would be really great. So then they just sort of forced their idealized woman, which like don't quote me on any, this is my like very rough understanding of how it all worked, but they just sort of
despite
like co-opted that, and we're just like, yeah, Asian women are submissive, and that's what we want in our women, and then just white supremacy. That's
we
what it is.
have degrees, none of them are history, so we don't know.
We all
But I
have
think
degrees.
because I was thinking about it when you were talking about it earlier, and one of my ex-girlfriends is South Korean, and I
Mhm.
think it also probably stems from the culture there, because it's always like family is always this really tight knit thing over there, and it's like you listen to
Right.
your parents, so it's like you don't really have that kind of freedom. You have to listen, and I think that
Mhm.
kind of thing is being twisted in a way
Yeah.
at times.
I probably because just Asian culture in general, from my understanding, is like family is like the most important thing, right? Like
Yeah,
family, the thing my family always says is like your family's always going to be your family, but you can change your friends, but you can't change who your family is.
now with that, do you think it's important that Shang-Chi's villain in the movie is another Asian character and is his father? Like, do you think that that's going to have like an impact on how people perceive the character for other Asians watching the movie?
I think so, mostly for the current generation. Me being the like a first generation American born Chinese person, it I think it'll affect a lot of people that are like the millennial age and younger for sure, because a lot of people have this idea, or a lot of parents have this idea where like your kids do what you tell them to do.
Yeah.
But it's like trying to break away from that mold, especially with us that are experiencing like American culture, like growing up in it for the first time and being part of that and being able to sort of do your own thing and not have to listen to parents. Like, obviously, you got to listen to your parents to some extent, but like
Yeah.
being able to make your own choices and stepping outside of what your parents' preconceived idea for you is. And for me personally, it's a big subject for me because I am in my family, I'm the oldest of my generation. I'm the first one that was born in America, and everything I did is technically not what they wanted. I flunked out of I graduated high school, I flunked out of college. I'm like, I don't have a degree. I play video games. I don't study. I did music for a little while, but like I don't fit that like sort of role that you see that a lot of Asian, like the model minority, you have like your yappies and then like your business people, your doctors, your lawyers. Like I was the first one, and I'd like to think I was like a very experimental like
Well,
like
first usually are.
point of
The oldest
view.
usually are.
Yeah. Yeah. But like my sister, I mean, she fits in the mold of like she's going to law school, she's graduating this year, she's going to be a lawyer, things like that. But I'm proud of her for it because it's what she wanted to do. It's not what my parents wanted her to do.
And oh,
Yeah, Haley.
Question: representation. Do you feel that it's like, how has COVID and like the obvious like anti-Asian racism affected like has that, have you seen like changes in how there's representation in like media or like anything
I
like that for
think
you?
I don't think like representation wise COVID really affected, but I think for the Asian community as a whole it really brought everybody back together, because before, you had like a lot of Asian communities were very closed off. It was like whatever was around your area. It was like everybody was Chinese. They would hang out with the Chinese people, the Koreans with the Koreans, things like that. But COVID and sort of the anti-Asian sort of sentiment brought everybody kind of together because it's like, hey, there's this common enemy and we have to protect each other. And so I don't think in representation so much it has changed as much as just like general a sense of community has sort of appeared again um, with the Asian community. So it's a little weird, but
Yeah,
you take your wins where you can, I guess.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it doesn't
Absolutely.
really affect media. It does affect more of kind of the real world
Right.
in a way.
Yeah.
It's like we'll probably start seeing stuff, come out in media with, you know, undertones to this situation.
Hmm.
But right now it is probably like too soon, I guess, for it to start affecting like media representation.
Yeah, especially since we're kind of still in the middle of it right now.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. It's like we'll see how it plays out as far as like content that's going to be made about what's going on in this point of history,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But I guess the worst representation, like media, for me, cartoons are really bad about representing Asian people. We talked about it in the last episode, Shaolin Showdown. Like, sure, they made one character sort of like normal, the Japanese girl,
And then they
but
completely
they
hit
also,
the stereotype on
yeah,
the
he was
character design.
short, had a bad accent, was yellow, like literally the color yellow, like, um, and then we talked about it sort of before we started recording, but Ghost in the Shell, definitely missed the mark on that one.
When we were talking about that, do you mean the show in general or the movie
The
adaptation?
movie where they casted Scarlett
Fucking
Johansson
ScarJo.
as an Asian protagonist, and
Famously
Yeah.
Asian ScarJo.
right, famously Asian ScarJo, where they casted her as the main Asian protagonist.
Yeah.
Movies are really bad about it. Like, I forget what the movie was called, but Emma Stone plays a half
Pacific.
Asian like
Yeah, half
character,
Pacific
and
Island.
she's
I forget the movie, but it's, yeah, half Pacific Islander. And I
yeah,
was like,
and it was
fucking excuse me,
yeah, it
this
was
chick is whiter than bread.
It's
Like,
called South Pacific. I think it's
yeah,
called South Pacific.
okay. Yeah, I remember that was a big one. What else? I mean, movies are kind of the worst ones, and I personally do have a problem with a lot of music where if you're trying to portray some kind of Asian theme, you have the little
the sitar kind of sound.
yeah,
The
Yeah,
like
wet
that
drums.
the chopsticks sounding kind of thing. I was streaming Stepmania the other night. I think Deca was there,
Yep.
and I played this one song. It's like very bad. It's very clearly made by like some Eastern European group, but it's about talking about like kung fu stuff, and it has very like Asian sound. I'll have to play it for you guys one day, but it's bad. But I mean, those are kind of yeah, Deca.
I'm just gonna add to that. One of the lyrics, just so everyone has like a baseline of what we're talking about here. There were lyrics that were like, "Go to the land of the rising sun." That's Japan, by the way. To learn karate. That's China, by the way.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty bad.
And
It's just
It was rough.
but
yeah,
I'm still happy about all the stuff because like Hong Kong action like kung fu films are such a big part of my life because that's what I grew up watching because like that's what my grandparents like to watch. And the fact that it's made mainstream with also with like Ip Man. Ip Man is
yeah,
one of the most popular international like kung fu films, and they're great movies. And then now with the Ip Man sort of influence in Shang-Chi and seeing Tony Leung in as like the main villain, and like he comes from like the kung fu movie background,
yeah.
and now he's in one of the biggest franchises, like being a villain, and then on the other side is Simu Liu being the good guy and playing his son. Like, it's crazy to me because when I grew up, I didn't have anybody like this on news, on TV, on cartoons and stuff like that. And then the only time I did see it is when my grandparents were watching TV back from, Taiwan and China and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm happy with the way things are going. Things can always be better. Yeah, Sharky.
Do you think
Okay.
it's important also that they're correcting the Ben Kingsley mistake about the character Mandarin?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because, like, one, his name is the Mandarin, right? He has
Yeah.
to be inherently at least Chinese, Asian, if not at least
Dang
Chinese.
it.
Huh?
What's up?
They're fixing that in
Yeah,
Yes.
Shang-Chi?
and
I had
for
no
anybody
idea.
who doesn't know the context, Iron Man 3 had a character called the Mandarin who was played by Ben Kingsley, and we all assumed it was going to be the Mandarin from the comic books. So we were like, why are they casting a British Indian guy?
Mhm.
Because I think he's British Indian,
I
not
believe so,
like
yeah.
Get up. Get
I
up.
think it's like from India, like British India.
Y Mhm.
So we're like, okay, that's definitely like still kind of whitewashing to a degree.
Yeah. And then they sort of
And
retcon it with the
they sort of
Tony
were like,
Leung.
yeah, then they were like, oh, he wasn't the real Mandarin. He was just a guy portraying it. And then they had like the one like short video and like the special features of a DVD where his character is told like the real Mandarin is mad at him.
Mhm, yeah.
So
I
it's like,
remember
okay,
that.
cool. So we might have a correction. And now they're doing it with a
Com
respected Asian actor, somebody with a
Mhm,
martial art movie background
mhm.
in a film where looking at the cast, there's one white guy and he plays a henchman. Like he's
Yep.
not even like a main villain. He like serves the Asian
Yeah.
character villain.
Mhm.
So yeah, you can't hear
Nope.
anything.
Personal
Okay.
Oh, there.
Oh, I was gonna say that was the one of the things that I liked about Black Panther was that there was like two white dudes. One was obviously one of the bad guys, and the other was like Martin Freeman, who's like
Kind of the bad guy.
really in the background. Like he's
Mhm.
not
Yeah,
like a prominent character. And I was like, thank God. First of
Yeah.
all, I was like, why do any white people need to be in Black Panther? This is not for us.
it's like
But
I
they
think
made them background characters, which is
yeah,
great.
Black Panther was important for representation moving forward. I actually think
It's my favorite Marvel movie.
Shang-Chi is just this next step of that natural progression.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I mean, the
Yeah.
Marvel universe in comics has a bunch of characters that they can
Mhm.
go into that aren't white characters. So
Yeah.
I'm actually really excited to see like how deep they dig into uh heroes and stuff like that. But
Deca, you had a question, yeah.
Have you seen Wish Dragon?
I did. I saw Wish Dragon. It actually has, coming from sort of Magic,
Uh-huh.
Jimmy Wong,
Yes.
he's the main character's voice.
Yep.
I've been following him for ages, and Wish Dragon was really cool too.
As Constance Wu, John
It
Cho.
yeah, it has so many really big names, and I really liked it. I didn't think it was a super great movie because it sort of like fit the like Lego piece of like a
Mhm.
children's movie, but I
Sure.
mean it's a children's movie. I can't expect a lot out of it. But just have it showing like Asian culture, like day to day Asian culture is super cool because that's what I lived. I would go to
Mhm.
school, I come home, and my grandparents would cook for me, and that was like a normal thing. And I ate home cooked food like that all the time. And seeing that the where like Asian life isn't like super exotic or super like you know secular it's not that different from like normal American everyday life, and seeing that represented meant a lot, even if the movie itself was like okay.
I do have
That's how I felt about Coco.
That's
I do
fair,
have
yeah.
one final question for Alvin because it's something that's been on Twitter and kind of been back and forth with people.
Hmm.
Train to Busan, yeah,
Oh,
a successful Korean zombie movie, like probably the best like international I think Korean movie in recent memories. And the
I
thing is
think
like they're doing an American remake, and I'm like,
yeah.
why just not dub Train to Busan? Like
Yeah, I think
why do you have to erase the culture from it to make it a strictly American thing?
yeah, I
Like
think it's a big problem because there's a couple things that have gone into it. Like, one of my favorite Korean films, Snowpiercer, it has Chris Evans in it. It's a great, 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 great movie. It's a thriller. It's so good. it also got adapted for American audiences, but it has a Korean director, and
Yeah.
I couldn't watch the American version. I think it's supposed to be a prequel or something like that.
The show, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
believe it's on TNT.
Yeah.
I
No,
couldn't
it's
watch it.
a retelling apparently. Like it's just they took the story
Oh,
and they put it in a way that makes a show instead of a movie.
yeah, and
So
I think this the Train to Busan falls in the same vein, of like what you were saying. It's like, why change it? Because trains in Asia
they're
are
important.
they're very important because a lot of people take trains, especially in the big cities, but also throughout the country. It's not like the US where a lot of people take planes to travel the country, in the US especially.
We have like
So,
2 big train lines in the US, so it's like,
yeah.
are you gonna make this like a subway movie or something? Or is it gonna be like set in like strictly New York City, like them on like a subway station? Like I don't
Yeah.
see a train system for that kind of movie working in
It'd
the
be
US.
plain to Busan.
Yeah, it'll be plane to Atlanta, like,
Ugh.
alright, sure.
I feel
And
like
like
that's
that's the thing, like
insulting to Busan.
It is because
you're already having to change the name. So why not
yeah.
just make another movie?
If you
Like
wanna be like, "Hey, this was inspired by Train to Busan," but it's like a very American story or American telling of this a similar story, then sure, I'd be all for it, but it's very clearly, "We're gonna remake Train of Busan, but it's gonna be, like, Americanized." That's, like, no good. I don't like it. And the same thing, like when Parasite came out and was like winning awards left and right,
they
people
announced
were
that they're
talking
doing an
about
American remake of that
exactly.
too. They were like, let's get an American Parasite. And I was like, no, the movie's already. I haven't seen it yet, but it's like, from what I hear, it's like the fact I'm not watching it right now is a sin. Like,
Yeah. Actually, the fact that you've gone this long without watching it is unheard of. It's so good. But yeah, it's like because so much of the movie is about Korean culture. A lot of the surprise and everything about the movie and a lot of the tension comes from the fact that it's a Korean family interacting with another Korean family. Like it's about the Korean identity. And so remaking it in any way that isn't sort of like based off of is I feel like is honestly insulting.
and I feel like this happens a lot more with like Japanese and Korean films. Like you think about the early to mid like 2000s, you get all these genre defining horror movies, The Ring, The Grudge, and then it's like within like 2 years it's like here's the American versions.
Yeah, I think
Here's
it has to
but it
do
loses a lot of the themes too because a lot of those themes are strictly like Japanese. Like a lot
yeah,
of them deal with a bunch of Japanese culture and then you just try to shoehorn that into American and it just doesn't
mhm.
hit the same
Yeah.
way.
I think I've realized what it is a lot of American influence, especially in Korea and Japan, between occupations and things like that. America has a lot more influence over those countries because on paper they're a lot younger than say China,
Yeah,
right? China's a very old country. It's a very old culture, and Chinese people are unapologetically Chinese in every way, including their media, their music, their movies, things like that. That's why kung fu films still get released in China and Hong Kong and are still very successful in China and Hong Kong because it's part of culture, it's part of their media culture. But and so China has a lot of pushback against the American influence, whereas between the Korean War and World War II, America has a lot of influence over Japanese and Korean culture. So I
yeah.
think that's what it comes down to. But it sucks that we can't let these countries do what they want to do without remaking something that they successfully made
They
and then
made
us trying to like pirate their success.
yeah, they make a great
Neo-colonialism.
yeah,
Yes,
that's all it
exactly.
is. It's just like they make this award-winning movie that's praised by critics for being something that is so uniquely to that culture that American studios are like, people like that movie, but they don't understand the nuances of why they like that movie.
Yeah, it's all about the capitalism and everything. And like going back to Parasite because I love the movie, I'll never stop talking about it. I will recommend it to everybody I know. like there's a big part of the movie. I'll try without spoiling any of it for you, Sharky.
I will
but,
probably watch it by the end of the weekend. So
I definitely recommend it. A big part of the movie is the food. There's a specific dish that is made because of the way Korean culture is with food. How are you going to translate that into like America? Like, what do we have in
burger and
America?
fries.
Right, and it's
A hot
like
dog.
right
A hot
because
dog.
specifically in Parasite, it's like the combination of two very different food, like two foods. Like, what are we going to do that here? You're going to stick some French fries in a hot dog? Like, I've done it already. Like, it's not new. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know. A lot of the sort of retellings and remakes, I just it drives me nuts because I want it to do well, but unless you're just gonna like take that movie, get other Korean actors that speak English and do it in English, I feel like you shouldn't do it at all. Yeah, Haley.
Yes. Nope.
And okay. I think okay, I'll get closer over here. I feel like we've experimented with that in like for kids, like with anime, when they like heavily like censored and changed anime to try and make it
Oh
more
boy.
palatable to an American audience. And we
Yeah.
get the fun things like this jelly donut when it's obviously an onigiri.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think now like that industry sort of learned its lesson to like let it stay Japanese, but like change like some of the subtler nuances of language into a way that you still connect to the American audience or the Western audience, but still stays faithful to the narrative that I
Yeah.
think the regular film industry probably hasn't gotten to yet.
I think
They
so because
haven't goofed as hard as 4 Kids
right,
has.
they haven't made that mistake, so they can't learn from it yet.
I mean, it's also the obvious like need to censor, like in Yu-Gi-Oh! When Bandit Keith was yelling at Pegasus. He had his finger
and the
pointed at him
gun.
because
Yep.
the real anime, the man pulled out a gun and chill, bro, it's a card game. Like,
Bro, it's a children's card game.
it's
Yeah,
also
there's
like
What's
the
another
even going on
lazier.
with the gun?
It's also like the lazier stuff. Like they keep Yugi and Kaiba's name normal, but then they have the need to put an American name
Joey
to
Wheeler.
all the other characters.
Yeah,
It's like
Joey, Tristan.
it's like you're keeping all the other people.
Taya.
You're keeping the main characters' names. What they
Digimon did
are.
that too, sort of, but they changed Taichi to Tai, and
Yeah.
they at least
They
tried.
changed somebody
I think
to
they
Matt, right? Like
Oh,
it's just
Matt. His name was just
Matt.
Matt.
TK.
which I think is just
I-
shortened from his Japanese name. It's just
And
like
like I feel like they were able to get away with like goofing up some of those like kids media because it's like pretty niche audiences for like that sort of
Mhm.
kids media. Plus, they were brought to the U.S. as like a cash grab for toys because like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Digimon stuff.
yeah,
And the film industry can't do that because it's a wider audience and like the damage they can cause when they screw it up because they will screw it up. It's Hollywood. That damage is going to be more lasting than like this. Let me turn this frying pan into a drying pan. Like it's not going to be a meme. It's going to be like
Yeah.
detrimental to an entire group of people in our country.
To be fair, that line is like iconic.
Fire.
It's so good. It's
Fire.
so good.
I used to watch the Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridge series, and like every so often he'd like interject actual like 4 Kids dialogue, and like my favorite one is like they're on the ship during they're on their way to the Pegasus tournament, I think, and then Tristan's like, in a few hours the sun will rise, and I'm like, what is that dialogue?
You got to put in filler dialogue
The
somewhere.
part where it says actual 4 Kids dialogue at the
Actual
bottom.
4 Kids dialogue.
well,
But yeah,
anybody
I think
have-
that's all of my thoughts about Asian representation because I think it's just been the most relevant lately. There's
Mhm.
just been a lot more to talk about.
I think last thing. Do you think saying she's released during this time, with everything going on, is important
I think so because
to kind of help?
it's sort of like a rallying cry for the Asian community to get back together and really have a positive thing to get together about instead of it being anti-Asian, sentiments and attacks and stuff like that. It's a win for us to be like, hey, this is a win. Let's take it and let's just keep giving love out because I think at the end of the day, positive vibes and just positivity outweighs anything negative. And I feel like that's what really keeps communities together, is just positivity instead of getting together, getting up in arms about something negative.
Yeah, I think it's important now when they feel or people are treating them like a villain that it's important that they're getting a hero, like in a movie. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to put it.
yeah. Well, I think that is it. It's a good discussion, good insight from
Great talks from
some
everybody.
wonderful individuals.
Very
So,
marginalized individuals.
Absolutely.
I mean, we can do episodes like this with a bunch of our friends. Like we have people from all walks of life, all kinds of racial identities, gender identities, sexual identities. So it's definitely something that I think we can just like build on with other people as
Absolutely.
well.
Definitely
So,
think it's a topic we can expand on and really just get other people's ideas on it.
and it is kind of
And engage in the comments.
and engage in the comments. This is a kind of an experimental video, I would say, if you all would agree. This is kind of a more, I guess, heavy hitting topic, or kind of a more or less, good natured kind of conversation. This is definitely something that is about, something that affects you all more in a day to day sense than just talking about D&D or video games. Even though there is some
We're also
overlap.
friends and we can talk about it like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, everything that we say, could help somebody see something differently. It could help, somebody else kind of understand their own thoughts about it. So it was a good talk. I'm happy that we were able to get together and do this tonight.
Yeah.
Too. I'm glad we could all sit down and have a serious conversation and really expand on sort of things that affect all of us. So
Yeah. So if you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to discuss your own experiences, your own thoughts, and everything down in the comments. If you're somebody who it wasn't represented in this video, I think we'd love to hear from you guys. So
Bring on the non-binary Hispanic folk into the comments. Do it. Do it now.
but hopefully this video holds you over until our next main podcast episode. And thank you all for subscribing to the YouTube channel, where you can probably only see this video. So we definitely do appreciate that. All links to all of our social media and other ways to listen to us are down in the description under the flow code link. I have basic links for all of us down in the description, whether it be a YouTube channel or a Twitter or a Patreon in the for Deca, or a stream for Skybreaker, I believe we have down there as well. So I'm glad you all could join us. I'm glad I could join you guys tonight for this conversation. And I guess we will see you all in the next episode. Bye, guys.
bye.